Well, I'm going to go ahead and start recording, and hopefully as I'm doing some of the introductions here, or the introduction material, we'll have a few more of our groups join us and get connected. I know sometimes that can be a challenge getting connected for everybody. So um, why don't I go ahead and start us off with a word of prayer. God, we pause right now and we just pray for this group, for this journey that we've been on together. I know I'm excited to hear from everybody and to hear the work that they're doing in their communities. And I know there's a lot of nerves maybe right now, or panic if people can't get connected, or any technological issues. So God, I just pray that you would work against any plots of the enemy to disrupt this course and to cause any problems, and just help people get connected. Pray for smooth presentations, that the technology would work well. We pray against any attacks in the name of Jesus, that you would just help us step into the transformational leaders that we are and be able to share with each other and learn from each other. So we give you this whole time. May you receive all the honor and all the glory from the hard work that this group is doing in their communities. And we celebrate what you're doing so far through this course. So we give you the rest of this time in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So we have with us so far, we have Claire, Bekele, Florine, Joe, and Mark. And we'll, like I said, hopefully we'll get a few more people joining us here in just a bit. In terms of the logistics for the course, I said in the email that I sent out about a half hour ago, but if you're nervous about sharing your screen, you can go ahead and email me your presentation, and I can try to have that as a backup, and I'll put it up when you ask me to. We're aiming for 5 to 10 minutes for each presentation, which is kind of a challenge to do. It means you got to be concise when you talk, and do your best to kind of use self-control to not share everything about your work, which is really important work, and it's all very interesting, but just try to do the best you can to kind of remain concise. And I encourage you to, even if you have a smartphone or a watch or something near you, to maybe set a timer just so you can keep an eye on your pacing as you get up closer to the 10-minute mark. In terms of sharing your screen, there is a link at the bottom of your Zoom room that says share screen. So what you do is you click on that, and then it'll bring up, it should say desktop 1 and be highlighted. That's what you want to click on to share your screen. There's also one that says whiteboard or iPhone, iPad, AirPlay, or cable, but we want to go with the one that says desktop 1 generally, if that's the technology that you're using. There's a little button in the bottom right-hand corner that says share screen. So once you have your screen kind of highlighted, then you're going to click share screen, and that will bring up what your screen looks like. You can see right now I'm just sharing mine. It has a whole bunch of different projects that I'm working on my desktop. And so what I'm going to do then is I'll go ahead here and I'll pick Tommy's presentation. And so that all of you can see that is there's his PowerPoint presentation. So one of the trickiest parts is people trying to find how to do a slideshow presentation, and all of your programs are different. Some of you are using PowerPoint, some may be using some others. So and have different versions of PowerPoint if you're using that. So if you just end up sharing your screen like this, that's okay. I mean, I don't want to get too held up on that part of it in terms of sharing your whole screen. But for me, the way that my program works is there's a little link at the top. It's usually somewhere near the top, either at the very top of your screen, it'll say slideshow, or somewhere near the top of your actual PowerPoint program, it'll say slideshow. So usually when you click on that, it'll have some different views. I usually do either play current slide or play from start. And you can see I hit play from start, and it brings up the presentation here, and everybody can see it. And there's some different arrows down in my bottom left-hand corner that I can use to go left or right. You can also usually use your arrows on your computer to go left or right as well to navigate through. And then when you get done with your presentation, one of the easiest ways to kind of get out of the screen share mode is just to hit escape on your computer, and that'll bring you back to this. And then when you're done sharing your screen, there's a little red button at the top that says stop share, and you all can see that. So I'm gonna tap that, and then I've stopped sharing my screen, and now I'm kind of back in the view that everybody can see. So I know I went through that pretty quickly, but the main thing is when you get to the point of sharing your screen, don't panic. We'll all be patient with you if that's the first time you're doing that. In worst case scenario, if you need to email your presentation to me, then I can share my screen and I'll forward the slides for you whenever you ask me to. So let me pause there with that. And I also wanted to say at this time, the microphone thing. So if you need to mute your microphone, which we encourage, if you're not talking, then you want to go down towards the bottom of the Zoom room. There is a mute button, and then right next to that is the stop video or start your video button. So that's how you share your video, and that's how you mute yourself. So I'm going to mute myself. Now I've unmuted myself. And so you want to keep yourself muted if you're not talking, but then be reminded when it's your turn to share that you're going to want to unmute yourself. And just a friendly reminder, if you haven't muted your microphone, then you'll pick up even the smallest amount of background noise that maybe you don't notice could be really distracting to others when, kind of collectively there's small background noise from everybody. So I know you all know that, but I just wanted to remind you as well as we head into this group presentation time to keep things a little bit less stressful for everybody. So let me pause there. Do you have any questions about the Zoom technology or sharing your screen or muting and unmuting your mic or anything like that before we get started? Okay. In that case, we'll go ahead and get going. And just a reminder, we have 8 individual presentations to get through in about 2 hours. So hopefully we'll stay on task. At the very end, I'll encourage everybody to ask or answer questions at the very end. I want to make sure everybody gets enough time to share and that we're not rushed. So with a larger group in one Zoom room, I'll probably move through them pretty quickly. When you get to the 10-minute mark, if you get towards 11 or 12 minutes, I'll probably send you a chat message or might even interrupt you to ask you to bring it in for a landing if you go over a little bit. So, again, just try to keep an eye on those times. And then if we have a few minutes left at the end of this Zoom room, then I'll go over some of the final document or individual project questions that you may have. So go ahead, Mark. Yep.
Yeah, just a question. Baxter was going to be our MC. I don't see him yet, so I just wondered if Joe would be okay if Baxter doesn't show up, if I would go ahead and introduce, etc.
Joe, you okay with that? I think you're muted, Joe. So if you're talking, you might want to unmute yourself. Well, not hearing from him, but Mark, I'm sure that's fine. Obviously, if Baxter doesn't join here, then we'll have you. Then you can go ahead and do that. So I'm trying to figure out what to do here because Group 1 is Florine's having some troubles with connection with her with hearing what's going on, and Star and Josh are not on board yet, as far as I can tell. They haven't joined the Zoom. So that would will probably move us to Group 2, except that we don't have Baxter yet. But we do have Tommy and Bekele on the line here. So could I ask Tommy and Bekele, if you're ready to go, would your group mind sharing first?
Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay, thanks guys for being flexible. I appreciate that. And I know you were expecting to go last, so go ahead and just take as much time as you need here to get set up. But I will actually, again, thanks for being flexible. Tommy and Bekele, I'll let you have the floor and just let me know if you need anything, okay?
Okay, thank you. I'm an MC for the DOXA, the third group, and so I'm going to share my screen. Wow.
There you go. We can see it. Good job.
You got it?
Yeah, I can see that you shared your screen and your presentation's coming up. So you're on the right track there.
Okay. So do you see there are two presentations actually this is the first one. I'm just confusing the two.
Okay. I see one that says common assets in the two cities.
Yeah, that is the later one. Actually, the first one is that's the group one.
Okay.
Okay. Did you get this one?
And I see this one. Yes. This says LDR group presentation.
Okay. Can you see now?
Perfect. Yeah, we can see.
Everyone see. Okay. This is the group 3, which is the glory of God. Myself and Tommy, we have done really very good job, I believe. So my presentation is primarily focused on Addis Ababa. The name for this Addis Ababa, another name is Finfinne. Addis Ababa is where African Union, which is the capital city for Africa for now, which is AU, and also we have a United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, which is a center in Addis. Addis have 10 cities, sub-cities. We have been told 3.6 million for so many years. We believe that it's more than 7 or 8 million. We have, I've discovered that we have 150,000 children live on the streets. And around 8,134 sex workers, which 87% of them found in the hotel, bars, and red light the houses. And 60% of the sex workers identified were between 15 and 24 years old. Very sad. So as I am working on exegeting Addis, I have driven from one center to another center. We have a couple of centers, like around 10 centers. When I say centers, like a big centers, for example, Piazza, Magananya, Bole. One is Mexico. If you come to Addis, you may see a place like Mexico. And I drove like 8 hours, of course, including walking, not 1-2 times, but a couple of times. And I've tried to interview the prostitutes, pastors, businessmen, church members, teachers, straight boys and girls. My general observation, as I see, is actually there are hundreds and thousands of people usually waiting for a public taxi to go home. In Ethiopia, especially in Addis, very hard to own a car because of taxes. And thousands of prostitution, actually, especially after 6, if you go some centers and you stop car, many of them come, looking for customers. So much brokenness. Hundreds of beggars straight at every traffic light. If you just stop for a minute, you can see so many of them, carrying babies, and in every corners, hundreds of straight boys, as I already mentioned. I have seen so many of them, boys and girls, handicapped people on the streets, paralyzed people, blind people. Political situation in Ethiopia right now is not good. The past couple of years, we are still in a state of emergency. There is a lot of economic injustice between tribes. We have internet problems, as you know, high taxes, tribal conflict, corruption. These are some of really hard issues, which gives hopeless things. There are also huge hopes, which I can say assets in Addis. thousands of new buildings. You can see at every corner, there are construction going on, new roads, new infrastructures, new real estate building, low-income housing projects, industrial zones, and job creations. So many new cafes, restaurants, car dealers, supermarkets. I mean, these are like just coming up in a very special way. New schools, new universities, and churches are growing in numbers in part of the city, mega churches, huge job creation strategies. Some of my interviews are really focused on places like the first one is prostitute. Two of them. My main question was actually, why do this? And the answer I got was to feed my family. Some of them have the kids and mother at home. So it's kind of experiencing deep poverty. Some says no hope left for me to survive. No one see me like a human being. So you can just experience a lot of brokenness. I have also met boys and girls on the street. And my question was how you end up in this and what happened. Some of them come from the family separation. Some of them family died. Some of them, their family are very poor. Some of them run away from the rural farm. And I have also met some business owners, especially these days because of currency, no foreign currency in Ethiopia, or I mean in Addis, the business are very struggling. And they think all these ups and downs come from because of the policy issues, and they think the government should do something. I've also met teachers who teach in the schools. Very sad to share with you. Some teachers even say there are students who doesn't carry lunch every day. And also they think community is not aware of what's happening. And they believe that if the church in the area approaches schools, they can preach Jesus in a very practical way. And not many people are willing to really help beyond their families. I have also approached and have time with the close friends, church members. They think prayer is a big factor, especially to change the city, which is really a very I saw myself. This was my old perspective. Something, the power of the Holy Spirit changes the mind and the people, life, and so many people are addicted to so many things. They believe the church should help the poor and also preach the gospel. The difficulty is, some say to organize a kind of supporting strategy is very hard. And the role of the church is to preach the good news. That's most of them what they say. And, it's just the old theological understanding. Pastors, most of them are struggling to have building. Really, very hard to have a church at this point in Addis because the land is very expensive. Very economical pressures. Very hard to keep prostitute because they demand a lot of money while the church have been struggling with its own things. I've also had time with evangelical church leaders who really think that the church has just lost in some of the details and very hard to organize and bring uniformity to reach the city through holistic approach. So they think we have to pray the unity of the church for the work of God, and lots need to cry in the city. When I summarize, I think it's a huge felt need and also asset in Addis. Business opportunities are so much, yet not yet utilized. A lot of things can be done. Huge development is under process, which might include so many people for daily life transformation. I think there is a huge hope. So much opportunities to be involved in the community, which not yet really worked out. Huge opportunities to provide some social service, especially from the church perspective. As I think in Addis, 90% of the community is Orthodox, and it's huge opportunity to share our faith. So many poor who are open to any help in a school or in a neighborhood. And the church in the real outreach. If the church is really in outreach, which especially church with the community, we can do a lot. So my recommendation: how do we start? How do we transform Addis? The church should learn to exegete the community in a smaller scale so that it is clear to see its role. If the church is not doing exegesis, which really I've learned a lot through this thing, the church cannot see the bigger picture and what is happening. And my recommendations, number 2, the church should fast, pray, and ask the Lord what God is doing in their communities. The church should involve into all kinds of community and neighborhood social event and life situation to connect with a community life. And the church should have a plan to serve the community, to help needy in a way it really makes the church part of the community. And so I have seen really the church should demonstrate a holistic approach. The church should respond to the need. The church should be ready to be part of what God is doing. So what is my role as a transformational leader? Actually, my dream is to bring the prophetic voice and shalom of Christ into city for sustainable transformation. So how do I do it? Number 1, my short-term plan have to have a clear vision. My vision is to see Addis Ababa city dwellers live shalom of Christ. Okay, then in my short-term plan, I have to share this dream with my family as well as key leaders in the city. Because it's very hard unless the family and the church leader accept this one, very hard to move on. And organize prayer team to tackle spiritual forces, see the unity of the body of Christ, and others embrace the vision. In the long-term plan, I think I can see it is good to work with local church on how to exegete the community in a smaller scale, so that it is clear to see our role, as a church, and share vision with the church in the city on how the church should fast, pray, and ask the Lord to transform the city. So, sharing the vision with the churches in the citywide is very, very important because it gives awareness, and train church leaders on how to find ways to be part of what God is doing in the community, involve the community and neighbors' social event and life situation to connect within the community life. And in the long-term plan, discern the church's leaders to how the city will be transformed. It's very good to somehow sit with the church leaders to discern how we can transform the city. Conduct citywide seminars, which it's very important to really create an awareness. Organize transformational leadership team. We need to have a team who can really discern, pray, and process things together. These people should be dreamers who have a vision as to how the church can be holistically approach the community. It's also good to create an awareness at a national level as well, not only just in a city level, so that the church have a plan and a budget to address the felt need in the community. Most of the churches, they don't have any budget on how to tackle the issues in the city. Work with my church leadership as a short-term and long-term plan for our church to address the felt need of the community. In general, I think it is possible to transform, but it is not easy. It takes a huge energy, prayer, and connecting as a team, as a church, as a body of Christ. But what I've learned really is not yet done, it's not yet started. The issue is as it is. So this is my short presentation.
That's good work, Bekele. I was just about to jump in on you there. So good job bringing that in for landing. Wow, you covered a lot of ground.
Up too fast.
I'm sure everyone, as you're taking notes, or I'm going to move us through the actual presentation. So we'll have Tommy go here next. But just, if anyone has any questions at the end, if we have some time, we'll be able to ask those. But good work, Bekele, and let's go ahead and hear from Tommy.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me try to share my screen.
Take your time, Tommy. It looks like we can see your screen. I know you're trying to figure out how to get your presentation up there. So hopefully.
Yeah, I cannot see anything. Can't see anything.
Maybe you can close out of your screen share, open up your PowerPoint presentation on your desktop, and then try it again. There you go. Oh, it looked like it wanted to go.
Okay, I think I'm coming on now. Can you see? Hello? Hello, yeah. Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, but
hello?
Tommy, I can hear you, but it's not yet. Oh, now coming.
Yes. Can you hear me?
I hear
yes,
you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I hear you.
Okay. All right. I continue from where Bakeli stopped. I'm suggesting Abuja City. The federal cap is the federal capital territory of Nigeria and is located right at the center of Nigeria. Look at the map of Nigeria up there. Abuja is just at the center. It has a landmass of 8,000 square kilometers. It is bounded on the north by a state called Kaduna and other states. In fact, there are states all around it. Between latitude 70-20 north of the equator. The temperature range in Abuja is always 25 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. A brief history of Abuja. Abuja is traditionally owned by the Gbagis. It has a lot of rocks around. It has the Aso Rock, and that's where they named where the president stays. The term Aso Rock is increasingly being used to refer not only to the physical structure of the most imposing rock in the area, but also it symbolizes the power of government. So when you come to Nigeria and you say Aso Rock, you are talking about the seat of government. The church, I interviewed the zonal president of the Christian Association of Nigeria, who resides here in the city of Abuja. He was the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria of Abuja, but now he oversees the entire zone of the northern region of Nigeria. In the interview, I found out that the church has provided and is still providing people that occupies various leadership roles. The church is providing quality educational facilities. The church in Abuja also provides facilities such as guest houses, hospitals, houses for rent for people at a cheaper price than the normal. The church is engaged in radio and television programs to bring about spiritual and economical programs for the people. The church also reaches out to inmates, to prisons, those in the prison, to widows, to orphans, and the rest. I also interviewed Pastor Iko Sabo of the Evangelical Church of West Africa, or Evangelical Church Winning All. He said prayers is the main thing also to bring transformation into the city, that the church started as a house of prayer and now a full-fledged church. That's how they started evangelism. They offer community services to neighboring communities of the vulnerable people and the IDPs. They provide water, borehole water, and the rest for them. They collaborate with other organizations in order to provide community services. I also visited some of my church members to see how they are living their lives in their place of work, whether they are living their lives to portray Christ. One of the members I visited, the workers, colleagues were able to attest that she's really showing forth the life of Christ in the office. And she's handling her work very well. And she also talked about challenges in her place of work for standing for Christ. When you stand for Christ, the corruption in the office, they will look at you as somebody who is not serious, and you will not get promoted because you are following the due process, you are following the things. She has not been promoted for a long time because she don't want to compromise her faith. So those are the challenges we have in the workplace. Okay. We visited some sites. I had a team of people who drove around Abuja. We saw some signs of hope, like the National Mosque, a place of worship for Muslims, built by the government. The Millennium Park, a very huge place for relaxation for people. But we also have the National Economical Christian Center, the National Church, where all Christians, no matter your denomination, will go together to worship God. Then there's a cultural center that houses the Art Museum, social welfare offices. We also saw some signs of need. Nigeria is one of the highest oil producing countries in the world, but we keep queuing for fuel. We cannot have petrol all the time. We keep queuing for fuels. So that is the picture you saw there. Then we visited the National Council for Arts and Culture. It was an eyesore. The people working there were driven out without notice, and no work was going on. The boys were just littering all around. They did not give them alternative place to go and do their work, and it was a chaotic situation when we visited them. Also, the National Stadium is supposed to be the best in Nigeria, but it is abandoned. No proper management, poor management, and it needs transformational leadership to make it work. Then the National Library that have been built for several years is still uncompleted. That is a shame for the country. We talked about our economic perspective of the city. The central bank is in the city. We have the International Conference Center where people all over the world come to discuss. The micro justice of Abuja. Abuja is mainly seen from the political perspective because it is the federal capital territory, and therefore all political leaders, public workers come in Abuja. Is the center of politics, is the center of public service in Nigeria, is the center of Nigeria, and in Obaki is the highest than any other city in Nigeria. The MESO cities, Abuja City, and various names are all the cities added to various districts. We have the district, Akit district, Sukuro district. That is a very high standard of living. So people living in various districts, it tells about their economic status, it tells about their standard of the city interacts socially despite the ethnic differences. We have so many ethnic groups in Abuja. Abuja is seen as a normal the micro-SCGCs, the city of Abuja is divided into districts, as I've said before, and there are neighborhood shops for commercial activities for residents. The road network is superb, and well-arranged walkways, bridges, and pedestrian roads are being constructed every day, doing very well, while churches in the urban centers are not doing well. Okay, the hubs of Abuja, we have, okay. The physical qualities I've mentioned, I want to skip that. The transportation system is superb. The environmental, we have good environmental system, especially in where the high economic people live. The environmental system is so nice, but where the low people live, the environmental system is poor. Nobody carries their trashes and all that. But in the high density areas, the environmental system is very okay. The demography of Abuja, we have over 2.something, close to 3 million people living in the city. And the Gbagis are the owners, original owners of this city, but they have been relegated to the suburbs. They have been pushed out to the suburbs. This is a picture of the suburbs in Abuja. In the Abuja city, we have a lot of suburbs in the city. This example of one of the suburbs in Abuja city, where the low class live, so dirty, no good environment, no good roads, no good buildings, and all that. But this is an example of a medium class resident where people that has the money lives. So beautiful road networks, good street lights, and beautiful houses, and all that. The capitals of Abuja, is very sophisticated with various ethnic groups, various people all around. A minute. Abuja, religious practices are tolerated in the region, but Abuja is not just fast-growing city in Africa, but also in Africa, but in the world. Yeah, I think that is all I have. Then I'll give back to Bakele to share our conclusions about the two cities. Over to you, Bakele.
Thank you, Tammy. And I'm going to share a screen. Cannot start screen sharing. Why? Can you close yours? Yes. Can you? Yeah. Yes. Okay. This is the findings that we have tried to bring together. You know, how God worked in these cities, the challenge, and some of the common things in these cities. It's not just an accidental. It's mostly very similar. What are some of the things that God is doing in this city? Actually, the physical feature is similar, and both cities are center for you know, so many different activities, and it's international connection. I mean, it's very huge. Both are diplomatic cities, and the activities of the mega church healing centers is an indicator of the work of God. Actually, at this point, we will complain on Nigerians because the mega church and the prosperity gospel preachers come from Nigeria to Ethiopia. Now they are impacting so much. The challenges the church should actually do, as I recommended, and both of us have been working. They need to raise mature disciple Christians that will influence their world positively. We need those kind of people. They need to raise and provide transformational leadership for the two cities. Very, very important. Providing a qualitative facilities like education, health, so that a standard for non-Christian provide such service. Both of them this is a huge opportunity for churches to do this, raising prayer and intercession to deliver the cities from every satanic manipulation and witchcraft, which is very similar in both countries, but more in, I think, in Nigeria. The church in the two cities should ready to respond to emergencies and needs noticed among the city dwellers. That we identified. The church is not yet really done a lot. The massive population of the two cities should compel the church for the outreach because these two cities are overcrowded and so many souls are coming, and the church should do something. The economical movement in the two cities should be a voice of masses to the government and our policy. What are the common assets? The two cities have a capital city for their nation, as Abuja and also Addis for so many diplomats. The two cities have a massive population compared to other cities in the nation. The two cities have good physical structures, facilities such as roads. Lot of new things are coming up. The two cities are blessed with the job opportunities because of many construction is really happening. A lot of opportunities to start a new churches or to start a movement. New schools, hospitals, business centers being open almost on daily basis in most cities. The two cities are homes to very intelligent because highly professionals are in these towns. The two cities are economically high hub compared to other cities in the respective nation. These are some of the common assets. Tammy, would you continue?
Yeah, I will continue with your slide. Can you just go to the next slide?
Yes.
Okay, common challenges in the two we have. Lack of adequate basic amenities such as housing, high-borne water, affordable schools, transportation system, and jobs. Despite the opportunities, but we still lack these things in the two cities. Prostitution and corruption are on the high scale in these two cities. One of the major problems worrying these two cities is corruption. Leaders are corrupt. High rate of criminalities among the youth of the two cities is a common challenge. There are fake pastors, fake ministries, feeding from unsuspecting innocent church members, presence of handicapped persons, prostitutes, unemployed youth, street children occupying the streets of the two cities. High inflation rate in the two cities because of population density of these two cities. Next slide, please. Conclusion. From the interactions with the two cities of Abuja and Addis Ababa, we found the following things the church should do, the following roles transformational leaders should do. Transformational leaders should encourage the church to provide transformational leadership as an example to be copied for the secular establishments. The church should raise transformed people who will in turn provide transformational leadership in their various places of endeavor, be it in politics, in sports, in whatever endeavor they find themselves. The church should proactively be responsive to certain emerging needs of these two city residents, such as counseling, prayer, providing welfare, going to the suburbs to meet their needs, private, that is to be paid for, services as education, healthcare, to give the poor masses a cheaper access to those things. The church should take the advantage of the population density to open more churches and healing centers for the residents. The church should be actively involved in discipleship and rehabilitation programs for the people.
Tommy? Okay, I continue. Finally, the only known Great Commission given by the Lord Jesus Christ still remains. Therefore, go and make disciples of the nations. So, our roles as the transformational leaders, cast the vision of the city, community transformation. We need to cast the vision to churches and key leaders and, in a city. Organize visionary team from the churches to mobilize the body of Christ in the city, which is very, very important. Share the skill of executing the city. One of the things that our churches really have to learn, and we have to share that skill, practice the role of transformational leaders in our community, which we have to be modeling the way, conduct, teach and train leaders to be transformational lifestyle in our approach. So those are what we as the transformational leaders should do. Tommy?
I think we may have lost Tommy. It sounds like he was right.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry we took maybe time, and yeah, we brought Addis and Abuja together.
That's wonderful, Bekele. What a great presentation. Just to affirm, you guys, I love how you work together. And that last part, I know you were rushing a little bit, but it was interesting to hear about how you kind of combined the different assets and needs from both of your cities. I thought that was really creative. I appreciate all the photos that you both included of some of the different buildings and places that you went as you were doing your interviews. And, you know, interesting even to hear your hearts as leaders, some of the things that you were kind of naturally drawn to with your interviews. They were both different, but we got different, you know, pictures of your cities. So great job. Good work. Tommy, are you back? It looks like you know, we dropped you for a minute there. We'll give him a chance to get situated. So, Bekele or Tommy, any last questions before we transition to the next group, or last comments?
Are you asking us, Dr. Brian?
Yeah, I was giving you the last word. I mean, I just said good job. And we'll wait till the very end if anyone has any.
Sorry, my system went.
Any last words?
Yeah, just to add that, as we have said. Yeah.
Let me say one thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to say that as transformational leaders, I haven't had all these things.
Well, I think.
Let me say one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
I think for me it's like an eye-opening, because going into the scene, meeting people, working around is totally different than living in the city. So just I was shocked, because I thought things are different, but my investigation is I am lost in the city myself.
Yeah, let me also add that working with a group, I went out with a large, about 6 people. That gave them opportunity to also learn a lot about their city and be ready to be transformational leaders. So just going out with them already give them the encouragement to do something about what they see. I think that was very touching to me. And that as leaders, we need to cast the vision for the city, and we need to do something practical for our city, especially for the vulnerable ones in the city. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great, guys. I mean, both of those reflections, number one, for you personally to spend that much time just out and about in your cities, hopefully that was really helpful for you. I'm glad you noted that. And then also bringing other people along with you for the journey. When I first did this exercise 9 years ago, it was life-changing for me. And then since then, I've been bringing a lot of leaders to do the same thing in my city. So hopefully this will open some doors for you as well with that. So great job, guys. I'm actually going to transition for the sake of time over to beta group, to group 2. And I was tracking with the chat a little bit there. And I know you guys may be interested in having Baxter go first, since you're connecting with a borrowed computer and having some power problems. But I'll leave that up to you guys. I'll actually just turn the floor over to you, and you can get started, beta group.
Thanks. Baxter, are you here and ready to go?
Yes, yes, I'm around, Mark. So let me get in. Hello, can everybody hear me?
I can, yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I can't see people, so. All right, so we are, my name may be appearing like Sim Tambo. That's because I've stolen a laptop from my wife. And mine ran out of power, and we don't have power here. And my sincere apologies for coming in late. But having said that, I'm grateful to the Lord that I can come in just at the right time. All right, we are beta team. That's Joe, Mark, and myself. And without wasting too much time, I'll ask Mark to get started. Please, Mark, can you go on? We plan to move, each one presents their own, and then we'll conclude at the end with me. So Mark, please go in. Mark?
Yes, hi. I'm trying to pull up my screen. Can you see it?
Yep, we're good to go.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yeah, let it go.
Okay, great. Beta group, City Exegesis, and it's wonderful working with this group. Thank you, brothers, for all your help in getting ready for this. So I'm going to do an introduction to discovering the identity of Vienna, Austria, and the focus of our class, of course, with our readings and our class time, has been largely on the call to the heart of the urban poor, those without voices, those without authority and power. And the heartthrob is just huge, and the need all over the world is huge. It's really tugged on my heart, and I had to deal with some of the feelings of where I'm called to, and then these great needs in the world. But where I'm presently called to is Vienna, Austria, and it is rated consistently over more than the last 10 years as the most livable city in the world, or at least in the top 3, but usually number 1. And so the contrast is very stark, and had to deal with some feelings of guilt a little bit about being in such a comfortable city, especially hearing some of the reports from Bekele and the needs in that city and how people live there. I use from Dr. Randy White, the herbs, the civitas, and the anima identity markers lenses to discover items in my city, and had some fantastic interviews. Interviews with the chief police inspector, with a fire chief. I combined 3 taxi driver interviews. I had an opportunity to meet with the spokesperson for the human rights in Austria, actually was invited to her home, and met with the Catholic Social Services, the head of all the volunteers, 5,400 volunteers. And then also I interviewed a fellow foreign church planter, also from America, but he's been here for 10 years. And so I have a huge learning curve to learn about the city of Austria, and he was able to give me some of his experiences learning as an American. That was very helpful. I want to tell you a little bit about the chief inspector. This is Chief Inspector Michael Kopp, and he's been doing what he's been doing for 35 years, and it was not easy to get in to see the chief inspector. We had to have our questions ran through the press secretary for the police for the entire nation of Austria, and they had to prove it, and we had to affirm to them that we weren't going to publish any of this information, but was used as a student for a report. And this was a fantastic experience, because when I got in to meet with him, I felt like some of the resistance to the city that I sensed spiritually was beginning to break. He was extremely warm, welcoming, answered all of my questions, was very comfortable. We spent an hour and a half together talking, drinking coffee, laughing, and when we were finished, he invited me to come back anytime. He said, call me a few minutes, 10, 15 minutes ahead of time. Let me know, I'll make some coffee and we can spend time. So even yesterday, I returned with my wife, Kathy, and she baked some chocolate chip cookies for him, and we went in and spent another hour and a half with him, and we learned even more about the city of Vienna. And matter of fact, some things that I had to even change my information about this report last night. So, and he's invited us to come back anytime. So this is a wonderful connection, one of the many wonderful connections that we're making to open up doors for networking in the city. And it's very, very encouraging. Introducing some of the herbs ideas that we discovered. Vienna is the capital city. It's the center for politics and commerce, for culture, for education, for all of Austria. Just under 1.9 million people. That's 20% of the Austrian population, which means that 1/5 of all Austrians live in the city of Vienna. I discovered from the chief inspector, I thought it was 50-50, but he said no, only 30% of Viennese are born Austrian, 70% have an immigration background, which means that either that they were born outside of Austria or at least one of their parents were born outside of Austria. 450,000 of the people living in Vienna are from third world countries. Vienna has one of the very best public transport systems in all of the world, actually, and people come from large cities all over Europe to study the efficiency of the public transport system and to learn how to reproduce that in their own cities. And you can get everywhere in the city. It's accessible to everyone else through the buses, the trams, and the underground subway systems. It's very affordable, and people are able to get anywhere. Nobody is left out in that. But interestingly enough, people don't engage in public. There's very little interaction between people. Even if you walk past on the street, if you say hello to people and they don't know you, they think you're strange. So in public systems, there's very little eye contact. And I think this is some kind of self-protection mechanism that is built into the culture. Ethnic groups don't mix well at all in Vienna. And this is also evident in the public transport systems. You can see people in ethnic cliques or in groups, and they're having fun among themselves, but they don't intermix with other groups. And this is a challenge. Moving to some of the civitas markers. Of course, I can't get into animas, and I can't even give all of the herbs and civitas, but some of the history and the personality of Vienna. These were some of the individuals involved that are representative of the rich cultural history and past of Vienna. Mozart was here, Bach was also here, but this was the center for Mozart, and you'll see his picture all over the city. He even has his own candy bar, and Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and so all of these individuals. Sigmund Freud was the father of psychoanalysis, so psychiatric offices for psychology are all over the city. The Lipizzaner Stallions are here. This is Johann Strauss, and he is, of course, pardon me? He has the...
I just wanted to remind you that you have 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes, thank you. And so Johann Strauss and the classical Viennese waltzes all come from Vienna, the Viennese boys' choirs. Social system, crime and safety. It's one of the best social systems in the world. All of the interviews said nobody in Vienna needs to starve. There are some homeless, but very low compared to most European cities. There are no homeless in the wintertime. A very low crime rate compared to other cities. And I was astounded to see that the children are safe to travel public transports to school and back home, non-chaperoned, children even under 10 years old, no adults with them. Their safety in the city is just a huge issue. So some of the underlying forces, the Socialist Party is the strongest social influence in Vienna. Secular humanism even more than Catholicism, but with Roman Catholicism having a long-standing strength here, one of the strong forces that shaped the culture was the Habsburg Empire, ruled by the Habsburg family for 600 years, and they were strongly Catholic, and some of those values still strongly influence the country. The occultism is on the rise, probably because people don't enjoy and experience strong spiritual experiences in a lot of their institutions. Islam is on the rise as well. For me, the implications are that people in Vienna are very well cared for by the government or by the Catholic social services. The Catholic Social Services annual budget is 360 million euro. And so they really pour that into the people and other organizations. There are low social help needs. So I noticed strong biblical values from the past have guided social values of Austria. And there's an apparent sense of relative shalom in the city. With this mentality, life should be made at least tolerable for all and as good as we can make it. So the quality of life is a high value. God has been at work here. And so the question for me is not what can I get going in Vienna so much as how can I find where God is doing something? What is he doing? And how can I cooperate to bring healing and love to this city? And I want to find and implement ways to bridge relationships and serve and communicate the gospel. And I think the good way to do that would be to begin collaborating with existing organizations and churches. And we're beginning to network with those to find ways that we can serve the city in a transformational way. So it's not the end, but the beginning of our ability to help serve this city in a transformational way. Thank you.
Great work,
Thank
Mark.
you, Mark.
Yeah, I'll jump in. You guys go ahead and do your own transitions here. Go ahead.
Okay, so we can move right on. Dr. McCain?
Yep, go ahead and move right on. Good work, Mark. Like I said, for the sake of time, I'm moving us through here, but very interesting stuff. It's great to hear the different perspectives. So go ahead, guys. Next one.
Okay, so we move on to Joe. Joe, please move on. Come in. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I'm coming. Yeah, I'm coming. Just
okay,
be patient with me. Be patient with me.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, this is Africa. Okay. Can you see that? Can you see my screen?
Don't see it yet, Joe.
Oh. I don't know how to. Okay. I think I need a backup. I can't get it. I'm trying to get it. I've got it from the, yeah, I've got it in, I've took it, but I can't see it on the screen.
Do you want me to?
Mark, do you have a copy?
Yes, I'll pull up his copy.
No,
Please
if you
do.
can, no, I sent it to the professor there.
Okay.
The professor, Brian.
Yeah, either way, I can pull it up or
Please do that for me.
Okay. Just a second here.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. There it is. Can you see it?
Okay, good. Yep, go for it.
Okay. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to work in trying to find out about our individual cities. And it has been such a great challenge. And you can see that Zimbabwe is in Africa, an amazing continent. And then you can see my beloved country there, that's Zimbabwe for you. And then the next one, I'm going to just show you now quickly some of the pictures. That's the city of Harare itself. It's a beautiful city, but there are some challenges with it. I'll just show you in a minute some of the things that are happening in the city. There are lots of vendors in the city because of our unemployment, which is so high. On the brighter side, we have an amazing international airport. It's just been built, it's beautiful, outstanding, but at the same time, I will highlight some of the challenges. I was brought up in Harare myself. I was born and bred in Harare, battered, educated, everything in Harare. So I'm very much familiar with my city. But now that I've gone through the module of transformation, it has been a real serious challenge to bring about change in my city. You can see Harare is the capital of Zimbabwe, situated in the northeast of the country, and there is an estimated population of 2 million people. The climate falls into the subtropical hardened category. It's in fact the most reliable weather. Some people fly from England just to come and enjoy our weather because of its reliability and so much. It's secure. It's beautiful. Harare is Zimbabwe's leading financial, commercial, and communication center, and the trade center for tobacco, maize, cotton, and citrus fruits. Very much productive. The potential for it to be an outstanding city is there. Harare has been the location of several international summits, such as the 8th Summit of the Non-Aligned Movement and the Commonwealth Heads of State. In the early 21st century, Harare has been adversely affected by the political and economic crisis that is currently plaguing Zimbabweans. So from a sunshine city, there are challenges there. The city that used to be described as a sunshine city has turned into a sewage farm in a way, but still is the hub of the country's activities. In fact, there's so much migration from the rural into the city itself, hoping to find some green pastures. So we are very much challenged. Harare has been voted to be the toughest city to live in, according to the Economist Intelligence Unit Livability Poll. As much as it is one of the most difficult places to stay or to live in, there is a resilience that has been developed by the circumstances that plague us as a city in Harare. The transportation in Harare is quite a challenge. We have so many privately owned public transport referred to as commuter omnibuses. I'm telling you, it takes a lot of guts and courage to drive in the city of Harare. You must actually be up on your game, otherwise you won't survive to drive in the city of Harare. Taxis are available, but a luxury to lots of people, and therefore the government struggles to provide public transport for everyone because of our economic crisis. The train system is no longer functional. It used to be one of the tops, but it's no longer functional because, again, of the economic challenges. And so our people resort to using public transport. The ethnic breakdown, there are more than 2/3 of the population which speaks the vernacular language, and English has it is the official medium of communication. So it's very easy for you to want to propagate the gospel in English. People do understand the basic English if you try to convert in that language. About 2% of the population is of non-African origin, mainly European and Asian. And also now we have an addition of Chinese. The population of Chinese people is growing, coming into the country to take advantage of the gaps that they see in the economy. When it comes to beliefs, many other people, Christianity is made up of many different denominations, including the Catholics, the Anglicans, the Presbyterians, the Baptists, Dutch Reformed churches, and Pentecostals, not forgetting the indigenous African churches. In other words, our city has been heavily Christianized. In fact, there's a claim that it's 80% Christians, but I don't think they're all practicing, but it's just in terms of being Christianized, that's the reality there. Many other people hold traditional beliefs in ancestral worship, as well as in prophecy and divination, where divine inspiration is sought through communication with the spirits. Because of our economic challenges, many people are resorting to God, to these people, to seek some help or to seek some redemption for their problems, to actually seek answers to the problems that they face in their lives. So so transformation is a necessity there. The challenges that we face as a city, 95% of our graduates who go through the universities are unemployed. Homelessness is rampant in the city. Going around the city at night, you find people sleeping along the pavements. It's a very sad situation, but nevertheless, it's a challenge for transformation. Unemployment is a major problem, which breeds crime and prostitution. Most of our young people resort to drug and alcohol abuse to try to maybe
want to move faster.
Okay. One of my stories is that a prostitute asked me one time if I could pray for her. At first, I thought she wanted to give her life to Jesus Christ, but to my amazement, she wanted God's protection during a business of prostitution. So that's a big challenge for us as transforming leaders. There's a brain drainage in the city, a lot of migration from the rural to the urban centers. And the objective, of course, is to look for greener pastures. Our assets, people are generally open to the gospel, very open. And we are by nature a hospitable culture and highly literate. And I managed to interview a number of people, like one of the businessmen and managing director of a big company. And he was very much challenged to see the need for transformation. And I also interviewed one of our own BGU student who graduated some 2012, who's doing a marvelous work in terms of transformation, reaching out to orphans, reaching out to the marginalized in the community. So I'm proud to be identified with Baki Graduate University because they are producing transformers. People are transforming our cities. I also interviewed people like Mr. Kumbukani, who's also into transformation himself, going about seeking to alleviate the unemployment situation. So it's really a blessing to see. Let me come to a conclusion now because of time. I also interviewed one of the ex-MP of our government, who is a spirit-filled Christian, who is a desire to bring about transformation in our city in terms of helping out with those, and especially on the women's side, who tend to be looked down upon because of being a woman. The evidence of God working in the city of Harare brings us hope. Irrespective of the economic hardships, the Holy Spirit of God is moving and working in the hearts of people. I must say that the needs are great. One of the things that is so critical is the need for international presence. Most of the churches, they do make lots of noise inside the churches, but they're doing nothing in terms of reaching out the community. So there's need for international presence, there's need for servant leadership, and there's need for prophetic leadership that will make a difference in our city. Yes, it is the end, but I must say it is the beginning of great things in my city. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm done.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, I was resting.
Dr. McCabe, wanted to say something, or we can?
Yeah, great job, Joe. Again, I'll keep my comments short just to move it along here, but very interesting to hear about your city, and I'm thrilled that you bumped into a BGU grad that's doing some great work there. That makes my heart happy. So I'm glad that you shared that bit. But again, good work, and looking forward to hearing more from those interviews in your journal and final project. So go ahead, Baxter.
Thank you, Brian. All right, I'll ask my colleague Mark to just put my presentation on the screen, that we can move on with it. Mark, can you find something for me? Okay. So maybe just that's better. All right. So the next page, Mark. Let's go to the next page. All right. My city is in Dola. And it's located on the Copper Belt province of Zambia, called Copper Belt because we mine copper in this place. In fact, we've been mining copper over 100 years now. And Ndola is the HQ for this province. It is as old as founded in 1904. Go ahead, Mark. Yes, it's the third largest city in Zambia. I'm hearing my colleagues talking about cities with 2 million, but mine is 500,000. It makes sense if you're thinking about 15 million people in the country. It gets its name from a stream, small stream called Kandola. Next one. All right, just try to show some pictures there of what it can look like. Let's move on. Okay, how did I do this work? I drive around the town and townships. I've visited marketplaces. I actually go to markets and chat with marketeers. I've done personal interviews with people. And I've also spent time listening to community radio stations in this place. So that's how I've been trying to learn what this city is all about. What are the assets? All right. There is a widespread road network, which is good, but then most of it is in a state of disrepair. Found markets almost in every township, which I thought was good. There's a soccer stadium at the northern end of the city. There's a rail line that cuts through the city from Livingstone, actually from South Africa, through Zimbabwe, where Joe is. Okay, and then we also have a river that flows through the city called Kafugu River. I also learned that there was an old slave tree. I think it's been here for hundreds of years, where Arabs used to stop as they would, rest and buy and exchange slaves, which is a potential tourist attraction. We also have an international airport, very small, but we're also building another one. I visited the building place as well, where they're building a new international airport. Let's go on. All right, that's just a picture of the stadium. I think that's an aerial view. And that's a stream that cuts right across the town. Move on. There are signs of hope in this city as I've moved around. Yes, Mark, let's move on. I found a library in the center of the town. It's old. The books are old, but it's good that we have a library. I also found in every township I went, maybe suburbs that people can understand. I found a primary school. Primary school is from grade 1 to grade 7. And there are clinics dotted all around the townships. The city also has a teaching hospital with a bed capacity of about 850 patients. We have 2 universities. One is public, one is private. And there are church buildings everywhere. In slums, what people understand as slums, in townships, in the city center, there are church buildings everywhere, which I think is a sign of hope. Let's move on. All right, that's just a picture of the hospital and the ward, one of the wards where patients are admitted to. But we have needs. I found made a lot of street kids in the city. Youths, I could differentiate between street kids and youths. Street kids, you could tell from the way they're dressed and so on, but youths who come in and go, I could also tell that these I could talk to some of them. They come in and go, but they're just milling endlessly around. And most of them quite educated, at least high school education, but they have nothing to do because of unemployment. Right? And yes, as you can read there, most of them, I could see them abusing alcohol. But also, some townships didn't have high schools. And what that meant was that those that qualified to go to high schools, they walk long distances. In fact, one of barber I talked to, I went to a barber shop. I thought I could find stories there. Told me, no, I got my son who walks so many kilometers, and I actually drove with him on that route, and I could tell it was a long distance. But also at some other place, I found young girls in high school. 3 of them, I gave them a ride so that I could talk to them. They told me they were going to school. It was a long way, 15 kilometers, and I was driving, trying to find out how do you get there. And I was heartbroken to learn that they may try to walk, but 15 kilometers is too long. Some of them, all they do is plead for transport. And I was thinking, this is very dangerous for the young girls. Let's move on. Yes, prostitution is illegal in Zambia, but driving through the streets in the night, I met a lot of prostitutes, chatted with some of them. Their job is basically to sell sex, for many of them. But also I learned that street kids are also boys and girls. So the girls are being abused sexually, and some of them are even pregnant, I learned. Also in a particular township, there was a murder. Somebody just went to this home and I don't know what happened. They didn't like the guy, they killed him. And I attended that burial. And also in the same township, I was driving through and I found people gathering. They were saying, no, we're waiting for the police. I asked why they were waiting for the police. They told me there's a dead body in the fields. So crime is a problem in some slums or shanties. Another problem we have is medicines. In these clinics and teaching hospitals just don't exist. People are told to go and buy for themselves. Most of the buyers are actually poor people. They can't afford even to buy food to begin with. And then congestion. Because of the state of affairs, poverty, and all sorts of things, you find that people are almost always sick. And so the hospitals are overwhelmed. I actually spoke to one of the professors. He's a professor in the university, but he's also working as a medical person in the hospital. He said it is almost impossible to handle the problems. Let's move on. Not long ago, we had an outbreak of cholera in the city. And cholera basically is a disease of poor sanitation. But there's hope. And God is already at work here. One thing is the Catholics have put up a very good boarding school for girls. And it apparently has been around from 1952. They're doing a good job. Next. Yes, a couple where, in fact, in the area where I'm staying, a couple has put up a university, good university, being funded by people who are concerned. Not all of them Zambians, some of them Australians, most of them Americans, by the way. And they're doing a huge job. We move on. And because of the number of churches across the city, I'm thinking that like it's better that people are preaching something than preaching nothing at all. So to me, that's a glimmer of hope. All right, so that's my end, but I need to say that I also included a few things. My team, I said I should put in two things. One, my church is doing an outreach in a very poor environment area where we go to preach the gospel every Sunday. Pretty much every Sunday I go to preach, and Saturdays I'm going for Bible studies there. And also Habitat have started putting up housing for the poor. So I'm thinking that's a very good thing. Another thing that my wife and I are doing, we've started a small business, hiring, because that's our concern, hiring high school dropouts, those who dropped out because maybe of teenage pregnancy, maybe because just the facilities at home were not in good shape. Trying to hire those so they can pay their way into high school and graduate high school and hopefully get into college or university afterwards. We just have 6 employees at the moment. We're struggling with issues to do with financing that operation. But yeah, we're moving on. I think I can say there I end. Thank you very much.
All right, that was great, Baxter. I appreciated the stories there at the end as well. Loved the photos. You had a real hopeful approach and the signs of hope with the the pictures of the hospital. But then, man, one of the themes we're seeing through so many of these presentations is the young people being exploited and abused. That's really heartbreaking to hear about. So, that's quite a contrast hearing from Mark, where he says that young kids can feel free to walk around any time of the day or night and take public transportation. And you're describing some of the exploitation that's happening in your context. But also interesting to hear some of the good work that's happening there. And as you mentioned with Joe, also participating in the work that the Holy Spirit is already doing in your context and finding places where God's at work and joining that work. Appreciated that. So Joe and Mark and Baxter, great job. Beta group, any final comments that you guys wanted to make before we move on to our last group?
Yes, Brian, I think maybe I'll allow my colleagues. I should have spoken about what we learned as a summary, but let me allow my colleagues to come in one after another. Joe, Mark, please come in. I won't present what we learned, but we can bring it up just now.
Hi, hey, thanks. It was really great synergy working together and helping each other present our presentations. And I made a note of a number of things that we learned from each other, but I just want to mention one of them, and that was the huge contrast between Joe's city and my city. My city is rated the most livable city in the world consistently over the last 10 years, or a little bit more, and his was rated the worst city in the world. But he mentioned how open his people are to the gospel, and how our city is, and I notice how difficult it is for people to even listen to anything that you want to say to them, plus especially the gospel, that they're pretty close to because of kind of their experience with religion being oppressive and controlling, and kind of a rejection of that. So you have a huge Catholic history, but pretty much in the city of Vienna, more than other parts of the country, a very secular society. And that's the contrast is just immense. And to realize that there are all kinds of poverty, and Joe's city is full of poverty. Our city is full of spiritual poverty. And I was reminded of the scripture from Revelation that said, you say you are rich and you have everything you need and you need nothing. But I say to you, you are poor and you are naked and you are in great need. And so the contrast is not only that we are the haves and perhaps in Joe's city the have-nots, but it sounds like in the spiritual realm they are the haves and our city is the have-nots. So that was a great learning experience.
Thank you. Joe, anything?
I think I have I've been very much humbled by the reality that with the experience of going through the transformation exercise, that there is so much, the need for transformation is everywhere. So there is that common thread in all our respective cities, the need for God and the need for not only spiritual transformation, but societal transformation, whereby the society needs to be transformed. I've been very much challenged, inspired, that there's no point in just talking of making evangelical noises. The need is for us to go out there. I was very much stretched that if our churches were closed, if the doors were closed, would the community notice that? So there's need for us to be incarnational. There's need for us to be to go about and make a difference in our respective cities. So I really been blessed, and I think my life has never been the same ever since. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. Brian, can I say something as well? Just in conclusion.
Absolutely, please do, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think two things that I was reminded of. Number one, it doesn't matter how advanced the city is or how backward the city is in terms of economic progress. There's always something that a transformational leader can improve on. That's what I learned from this because of the two extremes. Mark City is the best in quotes and Joe City is the worst in quotes. And yet both cities, we find that we have something to do. That's point number one. Point number two, I was also reminded that because I wanted to leave out the outreach we are doing as a church in this poor place, because we're really just beginning and we're struggling. And also I wanted to leave out a presentation to do with hiring, starting a small company and hiring dropouts and help them getting job. I think one of my colleagues, I don't know if I think it should have been Mark who said, look, put it in, it's okay. I was reminded that I shouldn't look down at small beginnings because I thought this is too small to mention. So I was reminded, Zechariah, is it Zechariah chapter 4? I can't remember exactly where it is written, but in Zechariah, Prophet Zechariah, it says, people should not look down on small beginnings because like somebody else said in this class, that so long you're doing something, do it, you're contributing to the transformation of the city. Thank you, Dr. McKay.
All right, I love this group. Great job, guys. Just outstanding. One of the things I just wanted to share, again, I'm going to move on to the next group for the sake of time, but just to share how much I appreciate how, even though your group is pretty geographically spread apart and your cities are so different, I feel like instead of that driving your group apart, that it actually kind of helped to bond you together and made you work even harder on the group project. And you really leaned in, and I appreciated how you did that. And that last line that you shared, Baxter, there's always something that a transformational leader can do, no matter what the context is. I love that. I'm gonna steal that one for the next time I teach I teach the course.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Martin, welcome. Glad you could join us. All right.
I just have a few minutes in between two meetings.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got to hear. The group's doing a great job. All of them are. So we've got 6 individual presentations so far and a couple more to go here. Did you have anything you wanted to share while you're in here for a couple minutes? Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and turn the corner to Josh and Florine. I don't think Star has been able to join us as far as I've been able to see here. So we'll have to figure out what to do with with her presentation. But Josh, I know Florine, you were having some difficulties getting your you were able to talk, but you weren't able to hear. But I'll turn the floor over to you, Josh and Florine. You can either one of you can determine who wants to share next, and you have the floor.
Oh, thanks for having us. Florine, I'll be happy to go next unless you want to. Can you hear me, Florine?
Yeah, Josh, why don't you go ahead? I think
Okay.
her computer issue there. But
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to share my screen then so I can say desktop. Just one second. So I'll confess to you, this has been, can you guys see my desktop here now?
Yes, we see it, Josh.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'll confess this is difficult for me, mainly because I've moved to a new city in the last year, and frankly, I'm a little insecure about it. And the reason I'm insecure has to do with the affluence of it. So I've planted a couple of churches in some rough areas and small rural areas, and then moved to Billings, Montana, where I spent about 3 years helping plant churches for our denomination and for a pretty large church. And it was the first time I had one job in one city where I wasn't, moonlighting with other work as a church planter. And so I had a little extra time. So my wife and I and our kids, or my wife and I, our kids just kind of joined along. I decided to move into the inner city of Billings, Montana. And it was a very rough area. It sounds kind of ironic to think of Montana an inner city, but we lived amongst the deepest level of hurt that I'd ever experienced, both of mental illness and addiction and just familial issues. In fact, we were the only Caucasian family that lived in the neighborhood, and we were actually the only husband and wife to be married and have our own kids in the house with us of, a 4, 5, 6 block radius, and had lots of pretty neat and challenging experiences there, and would have loved to be able to do some exegesis on that city. And yet a year ago, we moved to southeastern Pennsylvania, and it is night and day different down here. And so, frankly, as you look at the area we're in now, it's really nice and pretty, and everything's manicured. All the lawns are cut. As you would drive through here, it would feel like suburban paradise. So it's been interesting to go, this is a different city with different unique needs as opposed to other cities that I've had the opportunity to live in or work in. But so this is going to be a little different in that what I'll be discussing here is really the affluence of this area, the wealth. If you look at the presentation here, what you'll see that we're right in the middle of lots and lots of large places. So I'm about 50 miles from both Baltimore and Philadelphia, and then a little less than 2 hours from Washington, D.C., and another 2.5 hours to New York City. So it's a highly populated, high education area of the country. Now, the other thing is I started thinking through this in terms of exegesis of the city and talking to our group. I was really challenged early on when Dr. McKay was talking about exegeting a city and literally saying exegeting means to be leading out of. And so for me personally, I'm not much of a theorist. I like being a practitioner. So as I kind of thought through the exegesis of my city, I'm also leading a church as a senior pastor. I began to think, how does the exegesis of the city, how do we lead out of the things that we're discovering? And so a lot of what my presentation in the next few minutes is going to be is on what's already been implemented and will continue to be implemented as a result of this exegeting my area in southern Chester County in southeastern Pennsylvania. So here's something that I think is pretty interesting. And you look at where I am. I'm in a place called New London Township. I'm a part of a church is now called Christian Life Center, but it was originally New London Presbyterian Church. It was started in 1726, so it's 292 years old. And lots changed in the last 292 years about the area, but one of the things that it really prides itself is on its history. In fact, about a half mile from our old church and about a half mile from our new church, we built a new facility, sits George Washington's carriage house, where essentially when he traveled to New York or Philly from DC, he would actually change horses in the middle of his journey. And where he kept and cared for his horses is literally within a half-mile of our property. In fact, one of the major pillars of our area, his name was Thomas McKean. He was a member of our church, one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and a part of the first school that our church started. His property sits adjacent to us. But if you look at our area, within a mile of us, there's not a large population. It's mostly rural, a lot of farmland. But when you start moving within a radius of 5 miles, there's now 25,000 people who live in our area. Within 10, it's 120. What's interesting is once you get to 20, you're getting close to 1 million people. But if you notice, as you continue to move down, by the time within 90 miles of our church and my city is nearly 10 million people. And with it, within 120, that would add Washington, D.C. is 28 million. And then if you look all the way to 150 miles, which would include New York City, there's literally 38 million people around here. And so as I began to have some interviews about this area and discover more, there's several different people I met with that I'm going to discuss today. One was the chairman of the board of Family Promise. Family Promise works with homeless families, basically use churches as shelters for homeless families. So each week, homeless families move from church to church. And there's some pretty interesting discoveries that I'll share with you about. Met with the director of the Lighthouse Youth Center in Oxford, Pennsylvania, who kind of shared with me the plight of what's going on with drug addiction and mental illness. I'll get to talk to you a little bit about that. Talked to the Avondale police chief. What he basically said is if the church could do anything in this area that would resolve issues and bring light into this area, he said, and he requested that the church would involve itself in the opioid and heroin addiction crisis that's kind of paralyzing our city. So I met with him, met with the executive director of a Constellation Network, which is an organization in our area built from some affluent businessmen who kind of launched this nonprofit to connect churches together for what they would say is just to do the common good. I met with a local church pastor who's been in the area for a while, actually leases our old facility, the pastor of the church of the Grove. Got to actually engage, interact pretty deeply with a homeless family, a family that was very affluent, made some bad decisions in terms of money and energy that he was investing in with the Chinese government, lost everything. I was connecting him through Family Promise, and met with a local physician. And so as I interviewed these guys, there's some things that really did come up. Now, one of the big issues that we saw around here in discovering is that on the outside looking in, as I mentioned in the beginning, this area is really pretty nice and amazing, and everybody takes lots of pride in living in Southeast Pennsylvania. And here's what people say is that life is just better here. If you notice on the top right corner, if you see the rank of income per capita, Chester County, that's the area I live in right now. You see the median family income in this area. This is the 2010 statistic, so it's even higher than this now, is over $100,000 a year. So the area has a temperate climate, very low crime rate, great education. The public school education in this area rivals most private schools in neighboring counties or neighboring states. And as I mentioned before, the world is right next door. Within a couple hours train ride, you literally have access to a tenth of the U.S. population. So as I started thinking that, I thought, oh gosh, how do I actually uncover what would be needed in this area? And as God's providence would allow it, I also got to start talking to people in our neighborhood because we live in this really nice neighborhood, nice lawns, nice sidewalks, all those kind of things. And frankly, it makes me a little uncomfortable how nice it is. But in our neighborhood, over the last 3 months, a lot of people, there's been lots of construction work going on because they've discovered behind the siding in most of the homes, which is stucco, which is like a concrete type material, kind of as a pretty facade. What they discovered is lurking behind that is all sorts of mess. So in all these really beautiful homes, $500,000 homes or greater, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage happening to the home that you would not even know from looking on the outside in. But when you rip open the stucco, what they're finding is lots of mold and lots of tree roots and other things. And so literally all over our community right now, stucco is being removed and being replaced. And as I've been noticing that, I thought, wow, that's actually a pretty good picture of what's going on in our community. From the outside looking in, it looks really good. But if you were to get in the inside and look out, what you would realize is there is lots and lots of broken stuff hidden in our community. So as I've been exegeting the city and trying to figure out how to lead out of that with these interviews, there's 4 very specific things that I identified that's kind of lurking in the dark. And one is there's just a lack of transparency and vulnerability. So by that, I describe those 2 words as different. Transparent means I'm just telling you what's going on in my life, and I'm being honest about it, and I'm revealing those things. Vulnerability is a little bit different, and that vulnerability not only says, here's where my struggles are. Vulnerability actually invites other people to be a part of the solution. And as a result of the second one, the pride and unwillingness to ask for help, people in this area live dark, secret lives. And so there's a lot of stuff that happens behind closed doors. As I spoke to the police chief, that he was saying there, you would be shocked at the things happening in our area. In my neighborhood 3 weeks ago, I actually went and spent some time with my neighbors because their son had died of a heroin overdose in his bed. I literally went into the room with them, with their son still there, and prayed with the family and did the funeral. And from the outside looking in, you would have never known the battle they were dealing with, because basically their response was, we thought we were supposed to fix this ourselves. And so you got that piece. And the other thing is because there's so much wealth and affluence here, people in this area don't really need, in their own mind, God to come through for them, because they're not hungry. They have plenty of food in their pantry. They don't need clothes. They have plenty of clothes in their closet. They don't need shelter. They have 5,000 square feet of living space underneath a new and expensive roof. And so the folks in our area tend to be spiritually apathetic or lazy, because they just don't have the same needs that a lot of the world does. If God doesn't come through for them today, they're still going to live and be safe. And so their big idol in this area is comfort and self-preservation. And so the other piece that's really interesting here is happening in my own neighborhood is there's just a lack of true community. Everybody lives in their big houses and does their own thing, and you don't really see interaction. So as we kind of started to figure out those things in the city, I started meeting with our elders at our church and going, how do we tackle these? And so we decided to tackle the issues that were the most prevalent, or the ones that we actually could partner with other organizations the best. And so the remainder of the next few minutes, I'm just going to share with you what we've been doing in our church community alongside our community. So we basically said, here's the big hurts and struggles that we see, hidden hurts and struggles in our community. Let's figure out how we can do something about it. So you got loneliness, mental illness, addiction, and homelessness. And so we have begun working that in reverse order. And so one of the things we decided to do is partner with to solve homelessness. And we started working with Family Promise. So Family Promise basically says, hey, you use your church only once a week. A lot of churches in the area do that. What if we brought in cots and we allowed families to live in your church for 1 week out of a quarter? And so we've begun partnering with them. This is the name of the organization. If you see on this kind of description right there in the lower left-hand corner, that yellow area is the area in southern Chester County that we have committed to helping with homeless families. So these are moms and dads and kids trying to get back on their feet as a result of losing a job, as a result of bad investments, as a result of the recession in 2007 and 2008. And so what we've already implemented in both our new campus, which is called the Christian Life Center, and our old building, the New London Presbyterian Church, both are used once a quarter for overnight shelter. So we just implemented that. One thing that's been really neat, I mentioned early on that I got to interview a local homeless family. This homeless family we actually identified by partnering with Family Promise, and they've come into our church. We've gotten connected with them. We've started to hear their story, which is pretty neat. The minute you hear someone's stories, the way you respond to them is so different than the way you would if you didn't know their story. And it's this big, gregarious family who just hit some hard times. And as I've started to have interactions with him and our church, what we've discovered is while this family promise model of using churches to help families have shelter, it does require families to move from place to place and be transient week after week. And so what we discovered is we had a property on our church and had $70,000 that was given 10, 15 years ago that could be used to provide shelter for homeless. And so we're actually in the process right now with this homeless family. They're actually doing the work of renovating this house that's on our church property to actually become a kind of a halfway house for homeless. So they can move from Family Promise into a home. And so if you see that picture, that literally is a picture of this family ripping up hardwoods and those kind of things. And now the next step that we've just begun doing is imagining our original property and working with Family Promise to convert it to a long-term shelter and education center. So that's what we've been working on there. And one of the things that we've discovered as we interviewed both the folks at Family Promise, this homeless family, and the folks at a place called Constellation Network, that's the executive director there, what they're saying is a long-term solution to homelessness is actually helping people overcome poverty. So we've started to partner with them to actually start offering classes called Bridges Out of Poverty, which is a class that walks people through how to make decisions with finances and overcome those issues of poverty. So while that's been going on, we've also started working with addiction. And so over the last 3 months, as a result of seeing what's going on with the opiate crisis, we literally have started a Celebrate Recovery group, which about 50 or 60 folks meeting every Wednesday, working on their hurts, habits, and hangups. And we've launched six groups collectively together where they get to now meet weekly to talk about these issues in their life, from opiates to heroin to all sorts of drugs or other issues with alcohol. And so we've launched those, and we've also made our facility kind of a home base in the area for other addiction recovery. So we have 2 AA groups and an organization called Casey's Calls, which meets here on a weekly basis now to help deal with very specifically heroin addiction. And we've actually moved one of our staff members to overseeing that area. So that's what
to give you a heads up to, if you could wind it down a little bit. This is great. So, but just like time-wise, just giving you a heads up on that.
Okay, thanks. So, and then kind of the last pieces of that is we've started working with our local community and the Avondale School District to actually start offering free mental health care, both using our licensed pastoral counselors and licensed clinical counselors that are within our church. And that will roll out in the next couple of months. And so as you see those things and we think through all this kind of stuff, we start saying, okay, how do we now use our property and our facilities? So we've launched the coffee shop and worked really hard going, how do we actually make that battle with all the things, particularly loneliness, a place that our church can be a center for good? And so the next step in this process is redistributing our property to imagine how it could be used more as a village center as opposed to a church that happens on Sunday mornings. And so that's kind of been the process of what I've been working through with exegeting our city.
Thank you, Josh. Sorry, it was great. I didn't mean to, sorry to rush you in there. So, I love. My initial feedback is just great to hear about how your church is leveraging your space for use by the community, and the different things that you're thinking through. Kind of from a homelessness of all the issues that we probably encounter as leaders, can be some of the most transactional type of approach to happen. And so for you to be taking this transformational leadership course right now and be thinking through long-term movement and processes to help alleviate poverty, I think it's great timing. And I know a lot of the churches that I work with on that issue, they have a willingness to open up their church buildings, but then you run into all the issues of logistics of legal challenges and bylaws of the church, and what if something happens and things like that. So it always sounds like such a great idea, and then you have these logistical hurdles. So curious to hear, have you run into some of that with your congregation as you navigate through that?
Yeah, we have, but what we've realized is it actually is a vision issue, not necessarily a logistical one. While it comes across as logistical, as, oh, what about this? And it's kind of the approach of just in case versus just in time, where a lot of our congregation has worked on the just in case model, that we have to cover everything, worry about all the details, like imagine all the possible scenarios and come up with a solution for it. And what we're kind of saying is, hey, while churches typically think we got to save for a rainy day, the reality is all over our community right now, there are people having rainy days. And if they're having rainy days, then why would we keep all this money sitting in the account and worry about all those concerns that are hypothetical when there are real issues in front of us? And so our church has kind of embraced that of going, yep, we're going to face some issues. There's going to be some legal trouble. Our insurance premiums might go up, but these are actual real people that their lives matter, and they have needs specific to the day. And so I think the urgency of imagining these as real human beings and real struggles has actually eliminated a lot of that. Now we know it's going to come, but we kind of said, okay, that's just what our church is going to be known for, dealing with those obstacles as they arrive. So it's actually led to some really good conversations with our elders and now with our church body.
Great. And any final thoughts that you want to share with the group? How was the process for you of pulling this project together?
Yeah. So I think I would say very specifically, the privilege of doing the great work of digging was really valuable. So at first glance, it was easy just to do a quick survey and go, well, our community is not as broken as everybody else's is because we have all the affluence that you would need. And so the joy of getting to actually sit across some people and hear what they're doing in our community, as opposed to just offering my prejudice of that's not needed in this community, was both valuable in becoming a listener to the directors in this area who are already pouring their hearts out for the sake of the mission, and also just for realizing that things aren't what they seem at face value. Has just been really good. So I just would say, yep, the big thing I've learned is the more you dig, the more you realize our need for Jesus and his gospel to actually be prevalent in every area, in every sector of our lives.
That's great. Yeah, good to hear. I actually was surprised when you were interacting a little bit to hear about some of your work in Montana, and then what a contrast that must have been for this project where you're at now.
Absolutely.
I'm really glad that you gave it a go, though, and dove in like that. So good
Thanks,
work.
appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So Josh, if you can stop sharing your screen there, and we'll have Florine. I'll turn the floor over to you. Have you been able to get situated with your technology there to be able to present? So Florine, if you're trying to talk, it looks like your microphone is muted there, so you might need to unmute it. I'll try to do that for you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Florine, we can hear you. And if you're not able to share your video, or your slides, maybe you can just share with us for a few minutes about the work that you're doing in your context.
Okay. 16 years ago, a friend and I started Dominion Schools in Georgetown, basically because the standard of education in Georgetown was slipping so bad. In Guyana, was slipping so badly. And we thought we can give poor children, regular children, an opportunity at good, basic, quality education. We started originally with 2 children and working only with the preschool, the pre-Ks, the grade 2. And about 4 years ago, we started moving up from grade 2 to grade 6 because we had parents who wanted their children to continue with us. Now, what we discovered over the years is that regardless of when we were maintaining at the lower levels, yes, we had a very good academic quality child. And the children we put out in grade 2 then were very good, very strong academically. But what we found once we started moving up to grade 6 is that it was difficult to maintain quality attention span with the children. And very recently, it seemed to me that part of the problem has been the whole thing of sexuality, because they talk about it all the time. You can find children who bring condoms to school, although it's at a small school, only 35 children. 35 children ages 3 to 11.5. 35 children, but yet in that school we have issues where children stroke each other's penis, children go under the desk to touch children touch body parts, children actually talk to each other, children brag about sexual activity, and we are not expecting that, and we're surprised by it because we didn't actually have it. We've only had it in the last 4 years, let's say. What we found is sharing it on the group. Star pointed out that it was not just a behavior thing, it was a spiritual thing, and there could be a spirit of lust that actually is taking root within the school among the children. So in the last two days, I've shared this with the headmistress, and we realize now that if it's a spiritual problem, we need to pull in our intercessors. We have 3 intercessors who pray for us generally, regularly. We need to pull in our intercessors and treat it as a spiritual problem. So I'm very glad that I did share it with the group. Once I was trying to get your permission, Dr. Bryan, to do this rather than the whole Georgetown scenario. The Georgetown scenario is that I have done my interviews. I have done some walks, but they have not been, I've not been able to do the asset building. So although I did the prayer walks in a few areas of Georgetown, I felt limited in trying to do a full paper, a full project on Georgetown. Doing it with school is still challenging because there are 10 of the 35 children, only 10 are in stable families where the parents are married to each other. All the other children are in situations where you live in a family. In one family, for example, well, in more than one family, in 2 families, the child stays with one parent during the week, and at weekend goes to the other parent. And the parents have multiple children, but not for each other. So that seems to be the common thing, even where you have, once you have moved out of these 10 families where there's stability, where there's marriage, then we have a few families where although there's marriage, there's no stability. The one that I've been working with most recently is where the mother had left the home and they had gone to the court that she wanted her children, and the children backward and forward. But what happened through the whole thing is that I thought I should ask the eldest child of that family, there are 3 children in school, to come pray with us. Another good thing has been that I've had children from the school spend time at my home. So weekend, 2 weeks, 3 months. And so the children know me, and they would say to me, well, we're hungry, we want to talk, this is what's happening at home, I'm scared, I don't like what's happening. And because of this, in this family, one family, the eldest child and I have been praying every day. And she was able to say to me yesterday that mommy has gone back home. Joy or John, the co-founder, and I, the head of the school, feel that maybe we need to extend this praying with the children on a one-on-one. In some cases, we know we've had situations where the parents, both parents come to the child, and so there's a lot of toss-up right there in the school as who should take the child home. We've had that on at least 2 occasions in the last 2 months. The father came first, and the child looked surprised and said that I should go to mommy tonight. Mommy called and said I should go to her. And he said, no, you're coming home with me. And then the mother turned up like about 15 minutes after, and there's this tussle about where this child should go for the night, because the mother is saying, but you promised last night she'll come to me. Why is she going to you? So we've seen that sort of tussle for the first time in the last few months at school. It's happening in the school compound, in the building. A lot of the children live with one parent most of the time, and there are some situations where the one parent might visit the home for some time, because in one of the cases where we had an altercation is when the mother said, there's no problem unless you come to visit. When you come to visit, he behaves differently. When he's with me, there are no problems. So we realized that the transience of the home situation is affecting how the children behave at school, and is actually affecting their attention span, their wanting to learn, and their ability to learn. The extreme case we've had is one of the girls who was sexually active and who was boasting about it, and we realized that the children were talking. And when we called her and asked her to tell us what's happening, why are they talking so much, why is it all that you can't intervene when the teacher goes in, conversation stops. And she opened up and said to us that she was sexually active. Now, since we've done the thing of reporting it to child care and protection, and the parents have gone in, and she's had to sever the relationship with this boy, she's just withdrawn completely as a student, isn't doing any homework, hardly communicates in school and all that. So you realize that it's not just a situation of making a decision, this relationship must stop. We can't do it like that. There has to be some sort of healing that we take the children through. So even doing it just for the school, there's a lot that I need to learn about how one approaches, so that healing comes from this. And I'm remembering the webinar we had recently about shame and guilt. A lot of the children, I think, are feeling shame when we maybe get to hear of some of the situations, and we need to move that situation. I need to be able to move that situation from that into something that can bring healing for them. That's basically it, Dr. Brian.
Florine, thank you for sharing that. And I know we've been in communication in these recent days here to help you try to shape that in terms of whether you were going to focus on all of Georgetown or more on your school and some of the challenges that you were facing there. So, one of the things, again, I mentioned this earlier in our Zoom this time, but one of the common themes seems to be vulnerable children. And it's different in each context, but I think that there's no better place for you to be than right there praying with the young people that you're serving. When I think back on one of the first courses I took with Ray Bakke, he actually shared about how the gospel kind of took root in Europe for the first time, and that's when people were dying from the plague, and when all the powerful people of the city were running away from the city, the Christians were actually going in and holding on to children and people who were dying and giving them proper burials and caring for them, and themselves contracting the illness, but also caring for the most vulnerable, the children who were really suffering. And I know that in the early church in the Roman Empire, there was infanticide and other things happening to vulnerable kids, and Christians showed up. And all that to say, it just seems like the most natural work of what followers of Jesus should do is to step in when kids are going through difficult times. I know everybody in this class knows that, but just wanted to affirm that with you in terms of you praying with these kids and being present with them. That's heartbreaking to hear about, but also thankful that you're there to be a stable force in their lives. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, Florine, was you mentioned that only about 10 of the 35 or so families you would consider them to be stable. How did you find that information out? You just know that from when you're kind of interacting with the kids when they come and go from school?
And also from the registration forms. But we know that from the interaction and for who picks them up and who brings them to school.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, and again, you have some more time here. So over the next few weeks after today, go ahead and continue to get to process through that situation at your school. But also, if you get a chance to get out into Georgetown a little bit more, you have some more time here to be able to do that. So thank you for sharing where you're at, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Brian.
Yeah, did you have any final thoughts? I've been kind of giving that chance to everybody, but anything you wanted to share with the class as a final thought on your project here?
The whole need for getting to know the children better, because you can know the children from the standpoint of a teacher, and they need, sometimes more than they need of a teacher, they need a friend. And unless you can bridge the gap of showing them that God loves them and you will love them anyhow, regardless of what situation they're going through, you cannot communicate with them. I think that is where we're at now.
Yeah. Well, those are great last words. And again, I think all of us can continue to lift you up in prayer.
Thank you very much.
As you're going through that. So thank you again for sharing. All right. I don't think Star made it onto the call here. Florine or Josh, did you hear from Star? Or again, we'll work something else out with her if she's not able to make it, but I just wanted to check in with you about that.
I have not heard anything. I just checked back on the group page, but I have not heard from her.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get her to record hers or get creative about how else we can get her to share some of her work with the class. So with that in mind, we are actually over time. So again, I know I stepped in to rush a few of you there, but we actually did okay. So it's about 12:15 right now. So we went a little bit over, and I'm sure a lot of you may have had some questions. All the presentations were outstanding. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I'm highly encouraged by the outcomes. Again, just a reminder that we do these BGU classes to make it to improve your life and ministry and your leadership, and to empower you, taking some of the best practices and theories and applying those to getting to know your environment better. Just exciting to see, for me to hear personally how all of you are doing. And great job today moving through all of those. We made it through 7 presentations in one Zoom room. That's pretty impressive. Just one final note then. This will be the last time we're together for a Zoom room. So just so you hear it from me, I've been mentioning this a little bit in the online discussions and things like that. But great job. I appreciated all of you interacting with each other and the encouragement, and also sometimes pushing back on some of the things that we were saying. Really helped each other to learn and grow. This has been an amazing group, and I'm looking forward to reading your final projects. You've cleared the hurdle of the group project, and if you remember, many of you have already emailed me your PowerPoint presentations, but if you haven't done that yet, if you could submit it to the group project. I think it was a link in group week 8, maybe that you could do that, or it's in the assignment section. But either way, even if you just email it to me, your slides, that would help me. And then I'll post those grades within the next week or so. But just follow the syllabus for your final document. Your chapter 1 is your book reviews. We already talked about how I'll be assigning a grade to that first book review, so you can feel free to make the changes or suggestions that I gave you when I sent you the written feedback, and then just put that in your chapter 1 as one of your book reviews, and I'll grade it and assign a grade to you. And then, chapter 2 is your journal. That's going to be heavily filled with your interviews details, but also any other reflections that you have from the course as you made your way through weeks 1 through 7 of our main content. Your chapter 3, you're answering the question, what does it mean for me to be a transformational leader in my city? So you're going to have some details about your city exegesis and your interviews, the books that we read, quote those authors as much as you can. Maybe some of the lectures or comments that your classmates made in the class discussions, feel free to incorporate that in there. Just different things that you learned. We're just keeping a lens with the group learning outcomes. So the learning outcomes for the course that are on the syllabus. So if you have any questions, I know I say this probably a lot to you guys, but I'm available if you want to do a Zoom room, just individually. If you have any confusion about the direction you're heading with your final documents, I'd be happy to do that. Just let me know how I can be of a support to you. And The last thing I'll say is having been teaching at BGU for several years now, you're probably leaving this conversation thinking, oh, okay, I got this all under control and I'm going to have no problems getting this final document done. And then life will explode some way or another. The enemy will try to throw the kitchen sink at you to discourage you and want you to, do an extension for the course, and then that'll linger on. And I've seen that happen sometimes. So I just want to encourage you to kind of bulldog this thing to the finish here. You can do it. It'll be a big relief once you write this thing and kind of get it off your back. And I'm happy to help you. So that's more of an encouragement, not a admonition or something, but just wanted to encourage you to see it through here after all the hard work you've put in. I'd love to see you get some full credit for the class and for all the hard work you've put in. So just let me know how I can help. I will pause if there's any questions that you have on the final document submission. All right, if everybody feels pretty good about it, then I won't hold up more of your day. I'm already kept you about 20 minutes over here. So I'm here for you. Just let me know if you need to connect, but great job on the presentations today, and look forward to seeing the final projects that you submit. Let me go ahead and pray for us. God, thank you for this group. And as we come to the end of our collective time together, I pray for a special anointing on each student who's taken this course, as they're all working full-time jobs and ministries and businesses and nonprofits, and also taking these courses at BGU on the side. God, that you would empower them during this time to see these projects through to fruition. Thank you for the transformational work that's already happening in these cities. And we give you just every remaining part of this course. We put it all in your hands, and we trust you that you would receive all the honor and glory from our time and our efforts. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Great job, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Brian. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Brian. Thank you.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening wherever you are.
Thank you so much. May God bless you.
Thank you.